Okay, this last part is just because it's really cool and it might give you something you find interesting to study. And these are creatures called extremophiles. Phile is the opposite of a phobia. So a phobia, you're afraid of it. A philia, you like it. Okay? So one philia you've heard of is hemophilia, the disease where you cut yourself and won't heal. It literally means loves to bleed. So extremophiles love extreme conditions. And they are really bizarre life forms that thrive in conditions that would kill anything else. They often live on a process called chemosynthesis, where they live off sulfur gases at volcanic vents. So literally boiling hot acid and clouds of sulfur gas, and they live on it. And their discovery has now got us curious about what we should be looking for in outer space. So here's a very microscopic creature that lives in extreme environments. This is far too small to see by the naked eye. This is using an electron microscope. It almost looks like a machine on its mouth here. Here's one in Yellowstone's hot springs. You're going to see in chemistry, you will be able to explain all these colors by the time we're done. There's the highway going by the hot spring. This blue color is bacteria that love this water. This water is 70 degrees Celsius. Okay, so it's almost at boiling. And if you fell in it, you would dissolve in hours. And that's not theory. It happened to a young man a couple of summers ago. He fell into one of these hot springs and he was dissolved completely. There was nothing left of him. But this blue color, the bacteria absolutely love it. Down on the bottom of the ocean, discovered off BC about 20 years ago, these tube worms, which are about the length of the size of your arm and about twice as long, they live on volcanic vents. And so these volcanic vents under the water, they are far hotter than you would think. Water boils at 100 degrees at the surface, not down here. This water is 400 degrees Celsius. When the submarine out of BC went down there and it tried to probe that water for its temperature, when it stuck its manipulator arm in there, it partially melted the arm. Okay? So these volcanic vents have life forms that have nothing to do with the surface of the Earth. If the sun went out tomorrow, they would happily live in these boiling hot acidic conditions that would kill us. This has led NASA to start rethinking where to look for life elsewhere. Many of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn are covered in an ice layer, and they now think there are oceans underneath. So the moon of Saturn, Enceladus, the same guy that was dragged into the Earth, there are these volcanic vents, but they're ice vents. And so they see these venting here, so they think there's a layer of ocean underneath there. On Io, Jupiter's moon, which we will look at later in chemistry, and you'll be able to explain to me the surface chemistry here, all this molten sulfur, we now know there are things on Earth that could live there. So the idea that this would be a lifeless place now is like, well, no, we found Earth life that would like this. So they're rethinking this. Here's another extremophile in the ocean. Fortunately, he's a really small guy. He lives in temperatures up to 867 degrees. So again, Venus would be no problem for him. So we now realize that life seems to find a way of surviving in just about any environment. The Titanic has been underwater for over a century, and if you see these things called rusticles, it is being eaten by bacteria down there that are consuming the iron of the ship, and the ship will completely disappear in the next 10 to 15 years at the rate these bacteria are eating the iron. They don't exist on the surface of the Earth. It's too inhospitable for them. They love the frozen deep depths where the ship is at, and they are consuming the ship. Cyanobacteria, we're going to see a lot of in this unit. And these are blue-green algae that thrive in conditions we hate. And you wouldn't like cyanobacteria. When you see them, they're really gross green swamp scum. They love conditions that we hate. Okay? And then I'm going to do a little bit later on the Mir space station and extremophiles, but we'll save that till astronomy.